Dave Palumbo here with an RX Muscle rant. Today's topic is going to be about an article that appeared in the Daily Post in New York a few days ago. It involves a powerlifting competition that involved an athlete by the name of Avi Silverberg. Now, Avi Silverberg was born a genetic male. He associates as a male. He has a beard. He competes as a male powerlifter up in Alberta, Canada. And he was so disgruntled with the latest laws, I guess, regarding the fact that in Canada, or at least with the Canadian Powerlifting Association that he's involved with, if you identify as a female, that you can lift with women, meaning that it doesn't matter if you're on hormone replacement. It doesn't matter if you've undergone any kind of change. It just means that if you roll out of bed in the morning and you decide that I identify as being a woman, you can compete in the women's competitions. So he wanted to make a statement. Now, there's another athlete up there by the name of Annie Andrus, who supposedly transitioned 20 years ago, and she has the records up there. So she has all the women's records, but she was actually a man, biologically speaking. So I guess Avi just said this is the stupidest law of all time, stupidest rule of all time. Yes, it's okay if you want to identify as a female, but not compete against biological females. So he didn't shave his face. He kept his beard. He competed. He broke the world bench press record held by this trans athlete up there rather easily. And he is now the female bench press record holder. Tomorrow, he'll probably go back to identifying as a male again and continue to compete. But it was a statement that he made. And it was a pretty cool statement. This is a guy who runs the organization up there. So he's not happy about this law. I mean, you don't even have to provide anything up there. You can just show up, show your, ID card and say that I'm a woman today. At that point, if that's really the law, then there shouldn't even be a women's category anymore because there's no separation anymore. It raises the question, why are they allowing trans athletes, men that were born biological males, that have transitioned or identify as females, why are they allowing them in women's sports? They're ruining the integrity of the sport because by nature, biologically speaking, we all know that 99.9% of biological women are just weaker than biological men, especially at the elite level of athletics. We're not talking about, oh, yeah, that girl is stronger than the weakest kid in school. We're talking about people who compete. So in a powerlifting scenario of people who compete, the strongest, woman is still not usually stronger than the strongest man. And that's just the way it goes. So the reason why they have two categories of men and women's sports is because of that fact. No one wanted to discriminate. When they started women's sports, they just knew that was a biological certainty. So now you come in and obviously people are identifying with different genders. And I don't have a problem with that. If you think that you feel like a woman and you want to be a woman and you were born a biological male, that's fine. Same way, if you were born a biological female and you want to identify as a male, that's fine. But you cannot cross the boundaries of what biological sports categories have been set up because it's not fair. And Avi Silverberg made a great statement by showing how ridiculous the policy is. And once again, I don't think he was doing it. He wasn't doing it for like glory or saying, oh, I want to be the best. He was doing it to prove how ridiculous the policy is. Now, this Annie girl who used to be a male 20 years ago and now is a female, and she's like calling this guy a bigot and throwing aspersions at him, but she doesn't like the fact that he did this and basically laughed in the face of this stupid policy. But the bottom line is that she doesn't belong competing there. If she wants to be a female, great. That's great. You can't compete with the women, though, because you're not a woman. You're a biological male. Even though you've had the transition surgery and you've done everything you're supposed to do, you still were born a male. The only viable solution, and I've said this before, is to have a separate category for trans athletes. And, look, the bodybuilding industry, when it went through its, early days in the 90s, and they added the fitness category and then the figure category, they didn't really like it. They were resistant at first to it because they said, this is pure bodybuilding. It's men and women's bodybuilding. And they didn't want to do it at first. But they realized that there was a need for that. Just like there's a need for men's physique and classic physique and women's physique and now wellness, it only expands the ability of the organization to have more athletes compete and promote it in a positive way. So adding a trans category in today's world where there's a lot of trans athletes who want to compete is obvious solution to the problem. And no one will get mad because then they'll be competing against each other in a category that's in between men and women. And we're talking about males who transition to females. Obviously, if you're a female and you transition to male, you don't have an advantage. So that's really not even a viable. But they could also compete. They can do whatever they want. They can compete in either category. It doesn't matter. Point is, I'm talking about males that are transitioning to females. So if they create this new category, while it seems, uncomfortable at first because we're not used to it, I think after a while it will become the norm, and you'll have a lot of people, a lot of competitors jumping in there because of the fact that there are a lot of people who identify with the opposite sex these days, but who are athletic or who are competitive and want to do things. But you can't sully the existing women's sport division by doing this in the name of, trying to do the right thing in today's society. You have to create an extra division because there is a biological difference, even though mentally there might not be a difference. I might identify as being a woman just as much as the woman is. Biologically, I have a physical advantage. So in sports, you have to have a separate category. And that's why Avi Silverberg did this. He did this to show it's just not right. And to be honest with you, I have 2 young daughters, and they play sports. And, at some point, they're going to hopefully play it at a higher level. And I don't want them to be losing scholarships and being beaten by people that have a dramatic advantage because they were born a male. It's just not fair. And it kind of makes watching women's sports not kind of fun anymore. And to be honest with you, if I were the top women, who are competing in an organization where there are allowing trans, men to compete, I would just say, what? We're not competing. Sit down. Like Lee Priest said, sit down and say, we're not competing under these circumstances. And then they have to change the rule. I think they will eventually. I think that just these politicians are very, very uncomfortable to make these decisions because they don't want to fall out of favor with, these radical, cancel culture groups. But the truth of the matter is, if you create a division of their own, now you have a place that you can put these individuals where they're competing against like people that are on the same playing field as themselves. And there's no complaints. Why would you want to dominate a division that you have such an advantage over? It's silly. I remember when I was bodybuilding and I was trying to debate whether I should stay natural or go into the open division, and compete in shows where they didn't drug test. And I said, my goal is to be the best in the world. Why would I want to compete against people that are not the best in the world? So for me, the decision was really easy. And so the same thing with, why would you want to compete against biologic women if you can easily beat them? Don't you want to compete against the best in your category? And if your category happens to be the trans category of males who have transitioned into becoming a female, who are not taking hormones, that are taking hormone blockers, then that's your category. I don't see what the complications are here. And I don't see why these people and these politicians are having so many problems creating a policy that solves the problem. It's simple. Give them a league of their own. Dave Palumbo with an RX Muscle Rant.